Hi, this is Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodall's Campground magazine, and back with me is Mike Gass. It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah,
Mike, thanks
I
for
toured the
here.
mainland for a couple of weeks, and I don't know how you guys put up with all those mosquitoes, winds, and clouds. That's just terrible.
All the traffic, right?
Oh,
Probably a lot
well,
more traffic than
no,
Hawaii.
we only have one road out here, so there's still traffic.
There's still traffic. So, Mike Gass, of course, former vice president of communications for Campgrounds of America, and he writes some for RV Travel. And I was just reading your article that you had up about the essential business designation that Arvik got last week.
Yeah, and
Mark Travel.
that is such a. I'm sure Todd will chime in on this too, but that's such a big thing that we got kind of caught flat-footed with, in the spring of 2020 when all the governors were shutting down campgrounds and other hospitality things, and people got stranded out there. I mean, they had nowhere to go. They were camping out in every pullout they could find, and it was getting quite dangerous for folks. And I think the industry really worked hard to get that designation. So the next time this happens, whether it's a hurricane or whether it's another pandemic, God forbid, or things heat up again, at least the campgrounds will be able to legally stay open now, and they won't have to fight that fight.
Yeah, definitely. And then our guest is Todd Burbage, CEO of Blue Water Development Corporation. Do we say the full name, Todd, or is it just Blue Water?
I just call it Blue Water.
Blue
Yes,
Water.
sir.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks for having me, Ben and Mike. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Yeah. Hey, Todd, just give us. I've heard some of the history of how you got into RV parks and campgrounds, but just give us like a quick version of the history of how you decided to own RV parks and resorts and campgrounds.
So there can be a 3-hour version or a 3-second version. The 3-second version is it was a colossal mistake that turned into one of the best gifts that's ever been given to me. So back in the turn of or the mid 2000s, we were in the residential development sector, and we bought a campground that was on the water. It was in deplorable shape, and the thing made an amazing amount of cash flow in this deplorable shape that it was in. And so we decided to build a state-of-the-art, or what we thought was a state-of-the-art campground, turned it into Castaways Ocean City, and that was the beginning of a new business venture for Blue Water, and it took off from there.
Yeah, now you guys, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys own parks, and how many parks do you own in total?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that. I had to ask some of the staff earlier today whether we own, manage, or partner in some capacity. We run 36 different resorts from Maine to Key West to Portland, Oregon to Texas, Yellowstone, and a lot of states in between.
Changes by the hour, probably.
We have contracts in on a couple more, and we love the business. Everything about it is great. It's family oriented. It's what Blue Water is, and we're just delighted to be a part of it.
And you have contracts. Well, you do work with Sun Outdoors, and you
We do.
also have KOAs, correct?
Sure, we're an equal opportunity employee. So we do a bunch with Sun Outdoors. Yeah. KOA is a big franchisor of ours. Love that brand. Also, Jellystone is also a large brand of ours. We love that brand. We have Yogi with NHLLC. They're sort of I'd say they're sort of a hedge fund type of group that's doing a roll up. They have about 8 assets across the Mid-Atlantic and all the way into Texas. We help them manage some of their assets, and we're good at managing highly transient campgrounds. That's what we do.
So, Todd, when you first got into this, and you had that first campground, were you pretty confident you knew what you were doing? And what did you find out you didn't know?
We didn't know a single thing about it, and I think that was probably a good thing. Honestly, what made us good at being good campground operators was we had a really good friend in the hotel industry who was the COO of Marriott, and he taught us all the ins and outs of Marriott. and sort of the Marriott standard, and the quality first, cleanliness first, all the things that we all generally know. But then they also added the component that a lot of campgrounds aren't really aware of, and that is the revenue management part of it. So
Yeah.
we have an entire team of revenue managers that are constantly watching the ebb and flow of stays and things like that. And we've been really, really good at the transient campground portions of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the revenue management seems to be coming kind of into its own, I guess. The more park owners I talk with are looking into revenue management, but
Mm-hmm.
in some degree, it is kind of surprising it's taken the industry so long to get to that point, I guess.
Well, before it was sort of a cottage industry, a lot of mom and pops, which was great, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loved the mom and pops of it, and we certainly do to this day. Um, the revenue management portion of it just takes a little bit more of a dynamic component to it. It
Yeah.
also takes a team, and it takes somebody doing nothing but watching the different occupancies and rates and things like that, which brings us to a great segue, really, and that is, the rising cost of gas, right?
Yeah.
So, notwithstanding revenue management, when you look at that too, you weave in the idea that we still need to be family friendly, and that's our mantra. I think I told you before the show started. You asked me how many family members I have in Blue Water, and I said I have 4,000, because I think of every single colleague that I have. I don't even have employees. I have all colleagues. They're all family to me, and so are our guests, right? I mean, really,
Yeah.
they return year after year after year, and they become family members to us, and we have the same worries as they do, day in and day out. And so we've tried to come up with some ideas of how to give back to our guests through we call it a 3-5-7, where if you stay for 3 days, you get 15% off. 5 days, you get 20, and if you stay 7 days, you get 25% off. Which essentially means if you come for a week, and I hope you do, that you're only going to pay for 5 days, right? 2 days are free. That's really what we're trying to do. And so we think that, we're basically giving back your gas costs if you stay with us for a week. And that's important to us. It's got to be affordable and family friendly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Todd, you mentioned Sun and KOA. What's the value of a brand like that, of a franchise like that, when you're evaluating these campgrounds that you want to purchase?
So on a global level, for anybody, I won't speak to me personally, but on a global level, a brand gives a certain amount of certainty around quality standards.
Mhm.
So a KOA, what's their highest level one? A holiday or a resort?
Resort.
The
Resort.
KOA resort, you have a certain level of minimal expectations that you'll have, right? And Sun Outdoors is obviously the same way. They have a high level of expectations. They won't allow certain lower quality assets even in their portfolio. So that's what brands do, is that they bring a level set of expectations to whoever's paying for their stay. And from our perspective, brands as an owner operator, brands have a defined group of guests. So whether it's 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, whatever that size is, they have allegiance of guests that stick with that brand, and that brand's able to drive guests to your property. That's the value that these KOAs and Sun Outdoors and Jellystones. That's the value they bring.
So are you evaluating these every time you look at a campground? You're evaluating to see which brand fits best into that market?
Not necessarily. A lot of times, a lot of the brands, in order to protect some of their, and this, Mike, in order to protect their existing franchise ease, they get protected zone, which is really the great thing about all of the brands, right? Doesn't matter which one, whether it's Sun Outdoors, Jellystone, or KOA, they give pretty generous protected zones. By way of example, you can be in Marriott in Ocean City, and there can be on a 7-mile beach, there can be 8 Marriotts, right? KOA and the other brand Sun, they protect those for the franchisees. So really, a lot of it depends on what the availability is. At this point, Sun Outdoors hasn't opened its franchise to franchisees. They're only their own brand. But as you know, they bought Jellystone, and Jellystone they certainly have aspirations to make that big and turn it into a competitor. Not just same as you have Hilton, Marriott, and Choice.
Yeah. I think you were saying, so what are some of the criteria, besides like the brands you were talking about, what are some of the other criteria you look at when you're looking at how different parks fit in your portfolio? I know you mentioned before the show, and you've mentioned to me previously that, water is a key component of what you're looking for.
Yeah. So blue water, just in and of its name, blue water, we want 90% or more of our assets are actually on water. One of the ones that wasn't on water was our headquarters, and we're getting ready to change that in the next couple months. So we just feel like water is a sustaining, life-giving, cleansing component and element of life, and that people want to be near water, want to be on water. Everybody loves fishing, kayaking, canoeing, stand-up paddleboarding, whether it's crabbing, whatever it may be. People love to be on the water. And so we feel as though when people take summer vacations, that's a big component to it. I will tell you that we've shifted a little bit, and we're looking towards a lot of the national parks, because you see the demand in national parks. They've had a giant uptrend in visitations to those. But if I'm being honest with you, as an owner, finding help in national parks is a difficulty. So there's always give and take in everything we try and everything we do. But that's the components. We look for reasons why people want to be there. We look for water, and we look for demographics.
Let's talk about the labor situation for a second. Do you rely mostly on the local help, or is it work campers, the transient work campers?
Historically, and what we traditionally try to do is support the local community as much as possible. We really try to reach out, whether it be the local schools or through job fairs or through the Chamber of Commerce, because we want to be a good citizen in every community we go to. So we like to hire local, stay local, and live local if we can. One of the other really great initiatives that Blue Water has is we partner with as many local businesses as we can. So the local breweries, the wineries, the local fishing charters. We actually try to have concierge or people in our welcome centers to be able to make it easier access for our guests to get out in the community. We partner with the restaurants that are there. But Mike, to your question, work campers have become a big portion of our national park portfolio, because those are the ones that have the housing and ease of access. So it's a little bit of both, but most of the campgrounds we have, we try to hire, stay, and live local and support the local businesses as much as we can.
You mentioned the mom and pop operations out there, and what's been going on for the last couple of years in this consolidation in some areas, and a lot of purchasing, a lot of outside money, investor groups coming in that may not know how to run a campground. Does Blue Water have a minimum you're looking at? What's besides being on the water, is there a minimum size you're looking at when you go in?
And that's a great question. For our portfolio, we pick the perfect size campground for Blue Water is 300 sites. Anything less than 200 would be difficult. An exception to that is that in the Keys, where there's virtually no land and no opportunity, no access, we do have a campground down there, Sun Outdoor Sugarloaf Key. It's exactly a 100 unit campground, and so those are a little bit different in high barrier to entries. But when you talk about for a management company and to be able to have a rec department, reservation systems, AGMs, GMs, and the quality of house attendants and staff members that you need to have scale for us.
What do you feel Blue Water does on the amenities side of things that maybe separates itself from like other resorts or parks or campgrounds? It seems like you guys are adding stuff quite often.
So yeah, you want me to tell my secret sauce, and I'm happy to tell it. But one of the things that everybody loves is something different at their favorite campground every year, right? Doesn't matter how big or how small it is, but people want to see improvements. They want to see upgrades. They want to see people reinvesting into the community, right? The campground that you're in. And how I even learned that was probably one of the top 10 restaurateurs in America is a little bar and restaurant in Ocean City called Secrets, and it grew from nothing more than a little rock bar, they used to call it, into this behemoth that fits 5,000 people now, and it has different venues all over the places, different things for people to do. And so I think people want to see upgrades and access to new things to do every time they go back. And so every year, I think it's a commitment that we try to do is to improve it.
So this flood of new campers we're seeing, Todd, have they created issues on the campground? More so, is it harder to run a campground now because of the flood of inexperienced campers?
I would say not for us. So far, it hasn't. We had some. I'm an avid boater, and I've been doing it since I was probably 10 years old. And I make a mistake about every single time I go out on the water, right? It's funny that I call the guy who's in charge of fixing the fiberglass and tell him before I'm going out boating that day, right? So accidents happen. People are always going to have little issues here or there. It can be stressful driving a 50-foot rig and backing it on a 40-foot wide lot. And we just deal with it, and introducing new people to our industry is kind of the exciting part of it. And, we love the newbies of the world. I think it's the greatest.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like the RV manufacturing industry is starting to stabilize a little bit. They're pulling back on the production rate a little bit to kind of match up what the dealers are telling them. Do you see that new flood kind of equalizing now? Are we at the start of some sanity, I guess, in the customer side?
Yeah, well, if I could be a forecaster, I'd be Warren Buffett, right? I mean, you'd be Charlie Munger. I really have no idea what's going to happen. I do think that we're in a rapidly changing environment right now. I think that at Blue Water, we have a saying that one day is equal to a week, 1 week is equal to a month, and 1 month is a quarter in each year. And so you have to be that attentive to even the economic conditions as they change. I think that, gas prices and interest rates are absolutely going to have a giant impact on our industry. It can't not. But I can tell you this, it's still the most affordable vacation that anybody can take. It's still sort of the wholesome Americana. When I was a kid, my mom used to take me camping on the beaches of Assateague National Seashore and sleeping on an air mattress. Come a long way since then, but it's still part of America, and it's as red, white, and blue as it can be. And camping's here to stay, and I think it's just going to slow down a little bit. We're hitting a little bump in the road, and I think it's great that there's several million more RVers on the road of America and enjoying the great outdoors. I'm glad they're spending their money in the United States of America instead of overseas or someplace else.
So here's a question we get to ask every week: is the e-vehicles and the expected flood of electric RVs when they finally get that figured out. What's Blue Water doing to get ready for that?
So it's interesting you say that. We have conversations every once in a while. And when I say once in a while, the last couple of months with actual investors who are planning for something a larger scale like this. I really don't know. It's above my pay grade to tell you what it's going to look like. Obviously, we're going to have more power and more pedestal power and things like that. But it's coming, and we're going to have to be resilient, and we're going to have to be prepared for it. This is my son Chase.
Okay.
Sorry,
Hi, Chase.
Hey, Chase.
Dive bombing. I'm on a podcast.
Oh, he left the room pretty quickly.
Yes,
So.
just put him in charge, Todd. You'd be
Today's
fine.
his first day of summer, so school ended yesterday or today. I don't know. Anyway, sorry about that, guys.
No,
so he's the vice president then.
No, that one's the vice president. His name is Todd Burbage, and he's right here too. He's wagging his tail and is on all fours.
You had mentioned that somebody above your pay grade handled the EV stuff, and then your son walked in. So I thought maybe that was the person above you.
Well, he helped me log into this podcast.
We also talk a lot about overcrowding and the efforts that the industry is doing to add more campsites. What are your thoughts, I guess, on how the industry is doing on that front? I guess in my brain, I get to a point where I'm like, well, are we adding too many campsites? Like if the industry starts seeing some downward trends, which hope it doesn't happen anytime soon, but like, are we going to have a ton of sites and not enough campers in the future, I guess?
My opinion, and this is just my opinion, and for what it's worth, I think that the industry was so underserved for so long that I think there's still probably a lot of catching up to do to get to an equilibrium where campsites to RV is at a sustainable level. I think that's why you probably saw so many price hikes during the pandemic. Was that there was so much demand and not enough supply. I will tell you, across the United States of America, to get a campground permitted and shovel ready is almost impossible. It's some of the most difficult development that I've ever done, and we do hotels, campgrounds, strip malls, whatever it may be. I've done it, and people in communities had this vision that campers, the funniest one I love the most is that they're worried about all the smoke that's going to come up from the campfires, right? And the noise. And I always love telling them, I was like, if you consider the laughter of kids playing in a pond as noise, then yeah, you're right. I'm in the wrong spot.
Yeah, I mean, we do hear quite often. I know Toby O'Rourke here recently had expressed how difficult it is to get the permits and to build a campground. I think she said 3 to 5 years is what they plan to start, when somebody's going to develop one from the ground up. What does the industry, she mentioned, more unity on that front. Do you think that, what does the industry need to do to kind of promote itself and make that process easier, I guess?
I think the RVIA they do a wonderful job of promoting the industry. I think whenever I've had issues, they've always been very helpful in either testifying or being there. I don't know what you do across the nation because each community has its own regulations and rules and all that. I think it's an RVI association or campers association, getting together and just helping each other. Really, I'm happy all the time. I'm delighted. I have this philosophy in life that a rising tide raises all ships. So whenever there's a person who tries to start an RV, a campground, or tries to get into new business or anything, I give them access to everything Blue Water. Sometimes my colleagues get mad at me and say I give them too much information, but so be it. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to come testify for people, and that's just what we do at Blue Water. It's part of giving back to the business that's been so good to us. I think we need to support each other.
So we've got a lot of federal and state parks that are in dire need of some infrastructure. And I know that previous administrations really looked at the private-public partnerships. Would Blue Water be in the market for taking over and running some national park campgrounds or state park campgrounds?
Absolutely. We're actually in high level talks with one of the mid-Atlantic states right now. They're actually being wildly helpful with us. The governor and even federal senator asked us to come see him, and so came to the governor's state house, and yes, the one thing is that the one thing that the government does really well is protect beautiful parcels of land. But I
Yeah.
think when it comes to providing services along the level of what you and I expect, they just don't have the expertise in it. And we absolutely would help out any federal or state agency whenever we want. There is some ongoing talk in the state of Maryland of starting a committee of which Blue Water might be a participant in to help talk about how to make the state parks a little more efficient, a little bit bigger, how to do them better. We've already given them a bunch of designs and a bunch of ideas and a bunch of plans that we've used before that have been successful. A lot of these state parks uh, don't really utilize tent camping as well as what modern tent camping sites look like. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Some of
Yeah.
these safari tents are as nice as my house now, with bathrooms and HVAC and full kitchens in them. They're pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they do get pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's interesting on the state park side. There seems to be a little bit more interest on that private-public partnership. I know West Virginia was taking a look at it. I just think on the financial side for some of the states, it makes a lot of sense because I think some of them have kind of gotten into some pretty precarious situations on the financial side when it comes to state park funding.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
um,
it's really difficult to run campgrounds, right? I don't have to
yeah,
tell you. It's we're in the hotel industry as well, and we have Marriott's, we have Choice Hotels, we have Comfort Inn Suites, we have Independence. I can tell you a full service campground resort is 10 times harder to run than a hotel. No doubt about it. It takes 3 times the staff. It takes, think about it. A 300 unit hotel is vertical on 4 or 5 acres, right? Go straight
yeah,
up, straight down, all uniform. And that a 300 site campground is on what, 200 acres? You have to maintain it. You have bathhouses all over the place, utilities everywhere. It's really much more difficult to run a campground than it is a hotel.
Well,
and you,
let's
and
let's talk about that for just a second too. Where do you find the people that run it? Where are the new managers coming from? It's got to be a very desirable position to be in, but I know that they're hard to find now and hard to train.
It's really hard to find out, but I can tell you what we found is two things. What we found is that the hotel industry, they're able to adapt. So we've hired a lot of people from the hotel industry and taught them the sort of the Blue Water way or the campground way. The other thing is that this industry really has its own niche, and we're all kind of quirky, and I love it. Right, myself is probably the quirkiest of them all, and birds of a feather flock together. And so we've had a lot of vertical integration and vertical employment. So we had people that started out as work campers who manage now, or they started out as assistant rec department who manage some of our campgrounds. Happens all the time, and those are some of my most favorite stories to tell.
yeah,
My HR department runs a department that she's directly responsible for over 2,000 employees, and she's a 26-year-old lady who is 10 times brighter than me, and 10 times more articulate than me, and she was our egg that we hatched. She was an intern who became an assistant, who became assistant director HR, and now's the HR director, right? I hope someday she takes over my job, really.
So, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that Mike mentioned the management part of it, because we are seeing more schools, and I'll pop up this link. We are seeing more schools that are offering like outdoor recreation or degrees and different things. Is
Yeah.
that pretty positive for the industry? I know this one's, I think, from the University of Wyoming, where they have like a bachelor's of science degree. So it's kind of interesting that they're starting to offer more of that now.
Absolutely. I think it's huge. It's going to be the new modern way of vacationing, I think. People's ideas of across the US and really probably around the world, their ideas of what a vacation is shifting. My own children haven't seen 2/3 of this country, and yet they've seen most of the Caribbean. and
Yeah.
and that's a pity, and that's a shame, and that's my fault. It's going to start changing, right? And I think that the world's seeing that, and so we have as much to offer here in the U.S. as we do any place. It's a beautiful, safe country to travel around in, and it has all the amenities you could ever want.
I know Mike at the beginning of the show mentioned, well, we mentioned the essential services designation. I guess what that RVIC and KOA and RVIA
Yeah.
all had a part in. I guess what are your thoughts on that, and how did shutdowns impact blue water, and I guess what are your thoughts on that designation, I guess what it
So
means
I
for
think, and I agree with Mike. I think it's amazing, and it's something that we hadn't focused on a national scale. I
Yeah.
will tell you, the irony of it is that in most areas of total devastation where there was either a tornado or a hurricane or something like that, campgrounds were the first places where FEMA and a lot of the first responders would go to before they went into the devastated areas. That was historically what they did.
Yeah.
Recently, even before this designation, the last hurricane that came through New Orleans, I can't remember the name of it, but just last year, one of our assets down there was called by FEMA and by some of the remediation companies to be a place that they wanted to stage and set up so they could begin the process of help and cleanup. And so campgrounds have always been that. It was just never recognized on a global scale that, my gosh, we've always needed this no matter what. And it's finally come full circle during the pandemic because it wasn't nationwide and a worldwide disaster. That's what happened. We always were the go-to place.
Yeah, I think on some level they were just trying to get people to stop traveling, but I think they underestimated how many people live full time in their RVs now.
Well, that too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a totally different
Yeah.
reason why as well. I mean, this living in your RV is basically driving around in your condo, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Yep.
mobile condo or a mobile home, as in U.S. highway mobile home, and people needed access to them.
So
How
we've talked a little bit before about the consolidation in the industry, how the new money's coming in, buying up a lot of smaller campgrounds and parks. I know that, and Ben mentioned also that I write for RVtravel.com, and that's got all the readership is RV owners, and almost to a person, they kind of equate change in ownership with higher prices. How do you answer that? Is that something that they should just expect because a new owner comes in there with a large investment and often makes great improvements to the park? Are prices always going to go up?
No, prices won't always go up. I think what you're seeing, and Mike, that's a great question, is I think what you'll see in particular in my experience with Sun is, they will purchase a piece of property and automatically allocate millions of dollars just for improvements to it. No expansion, no new water parks or anything like that. But when they bought Castaways for me, I thought it was the nicest campground in the United States of America. Right? I'm biased, trying to be funny here, right? The day they went in there, they probably spent $2 million more on really nice fencing, upgrading some amenities, a brand new playground for the children, a lot of security things that a mom and pop might not normally think of every day that they've had happen at other parks. And so I think that when you see some of these larger groups come in, you can have the expectation that while prices may increase incrementally, you're absolutely going to get more of a value out of your experience. Just no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I mean, when you talk about adding a new, I think it's only natural when somebody buys something, you look to improve things.
Sure.
I mean, that seems like a natural consequence, I guess. So,
Yeah.
I guess on the pricing side, camping's always been affordable, and I think when we talk with RVers and campers, they're kind of concerned about it not becoming as affordable as it was in the past. Is that kind of a valid concern? That's kind of bouncing off Mike's point, I guess. Should they be concerned that the prices are just going to get higher and higher?
No, I don't think so. I think that what you'll see, and particularly with Blue Water, but I think you'll see across the industry, as people become more cost conscious, as gas prices continue to rise, you're going to see opportunities for the buyers to benefit from lower pricing. There's no doubt about it. Just like with some of the pricing that we're doing to try to ease the burden and ease the pain of gas. I mean, really, like 2 years ago, if you bought for 7 days, a 7 day stay, you were going to pay full price for the 7 days. We're really pretty full this summer. I mean, there's not much availability in our portfolio, but where there is availability, if you book for 7 days, we'll give you 2 days free. And I think you're going to see that across the board. That's a pretty significant discount. It allows families to say either I get 2 days of camping for free or I get my gas for free. One of the two, right? You pick where you want to apply the money, but it is much cheaper. And I think you're going to see that across the portfolio, across the country, across all assets. It has to. And honestly, if I can be just completely transparent, you see it in the hotel industry as well. Camping is not unique in the sense of sensitivity to pricing and availability and occupancies and things like that. The hotel world during the pandemic, listen, when you could refi your house for 2.5%, right? You had a lot of disposable income. You didn't mind going to Key West, Florida, and paying $650 a night for a hotel room, right?
Yeah.
Because your mortgage was cheap. But now everything's gone up. I think you're going to see a reset in pricing, and I think you'll see companies like Blue Water offer affordable travel options for all the guests.
So Todd, you've got the history in strip malls, the hotels, now camping. I know you know how to run a water park because I've seen some of them. And
Yes.
So what's next for Blue Water? Is there some segment of recreation or outdoors that you got your eyes on?
Well, it's kind of funny you say that, but we did at the end of 2001, just last year, we did buy 2 marinas. We found those to be great recreational, outdoor, on the water. I mean, what's more blue water than marinas?
You
So
bought a
we're
cave.
say
You
again.
bought a cave too
We
recently,
bought a
right?
cave.
Yeah, you bought a
That was a
cave.
that was a big asset that we purchased. We bought 2 assets in Shenandoah Valley, in Luray, Virginia, which is just an amazing little community. And I will tell you, it's an amazing little community to do business in. Amazing people in Luray, Virginia. It's not far from DC, but we bought a campground down there called Outlanders that we're going to reposition as Shenandoah River RV, where it has a mile and a half. I can't even tell you the name of it because my staff will yell at me now, but they've renamed it to something other than Outlanders. It's going to go through a redevelopment. It only had about 70 campsites, and it'll have 300, but it's right on the Shenandoah River. Really amazing piece of property. And then we purchased Endless Caverns, which has one of the longest private caverns that's living. They call it a living cavern in the United States. So it's really cool. Nobody really knew about it. It's stuck away in the outside of the Shenandoah, but it's called Endless Cavern. It's really a neat campground. It's probably one of my favorite ones.
So
And
is that where you're
not
putting
even,
the? Is
it's
that
not
where
even
you
on
put?
the water.
Is that where you're putting the next headquarters?
I'm not sure about that. It's a good place to be, though. I can tell you that.
I'll save you. I think it's Luray RV Resort and Campground on Shenandoah River. Is that the campground you're talking about?
That's it. And if that's
That's
the
it.
name of it,
Okay.
that's why I couldn't think of it, because it's too long.
Yeah, the endless caverns. So, how do you know they're endless? Have you been through them to
I
find out if
have
they're
been through
endless?
them, and I don't know. It's miles and miles and miles and miles, and they have sections that require special permits and special licenses
Yeah.
to go. There's areas that's open to the public where we take people on tours,
Okay.
and it's about a 45-minute tour, and it's really cool. The place, I can't tell you all the history of it, not because it's a secret, but it has a lot of national history to it,
Yeah.
as in presidents held secret meetings down there, and
Hmm.
the people who are on site will tell you the stories behind it. But it has some pretty significant national history to it, and plus it's really cool. They have these amazing stalagmites and stalactites, and I never learned more about caves in all my life than I have there. But they're beautiful and amazing. And then, once you're done with the cave, they have hiking all up and down the mountainsides, and the Blue Ridge Parkway is not far away. It's just that part of the country and the world is a pretty special place.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you had a pretty neat picture with the cave when you sent out the release. So it looks like a neat area. And then you guys just do so much for the community too. I know you recently donated $1 million worth of land, and then you just donate so much. So you're definitely part of the communities that you operate in. So that's neat.
Yeah, it's really part of our corporate culture. Honestly, is that we try to give back to the communities as much as we can in any capacity, whether it be our colleagues needing time off to go take care of their own pet philanthropic event or whatever it
Yeah.
may be, but also giving real dollars to the communities. And so a lot of the communities we give back. We recently gave a big donation to the YMCA of Northampton County,
Yep.
down in Virginia, where we have two large assets down there. One is Sun Outdoors Cape Charles. The other is KOA Sunset Beach KOA, or KOA Chesapeake Bay. And so those two large assets had to live in that community or part of that community, and there was a community need, and so we donated $75,000 to help them finish out a capital campaign that they needed.
Maybe we should just have you list all of your parks before we end the show. We should
I
just
couldn't do that.
see how many of them you
Number
know.
one, I would get tongue-tied. Number two, I'd get forgetful. And number three, I'd have mutiny from my colleagues for being so irresponsible. So I cannot do that, my friend. I tell you what you can do, though. Go to www.bwdc.com, click projects, and you'll see all the great projects that we have there. And then we have some that are under construction that are coming up. It also has our hotel portfolio, marina, talks
Yep.
a little bit about our culture and our people. And anybody's welcome to visit our website or any of our assets that we have.
Yep, there's your website. So, well, I think we're pretty much ready to wrap up, but it's been great talking with you, Todd. I can't remember if I've met you in person or not, but do you go to a lot of the conferences? I might
I
have ran
try to
into
get
you.
out as much as I
Yeah.
can. I'm a single dad that raises a 13-year-old daughter who dances a lot, and I have an active outdoor son, and I made a commitment to him in life that I was going to be home as
Yep.
much as I could while they were little kids. I used to get out a bunch more when I didn't have them around, but once they grow up a little bit more, you'll see me everywhere. I've met Mike a whole bunch when he was with KOA.
Yeah, if you'd met Todd, you remembered, Ben.
Well, you talk about taking your kids around the country, just bring them to the conferences with you.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a good idea. I like that. I will.
Nothing's more exciting than a conference sometimes, right?
Yeah,
can
a
be.
teenager.
Okay.
Ben
All
and
right.
Mike, thank you for having me,
Thank
guys.
you.
Anytime you
Thank
ever
you,
do
Todd.
anything, if you're on the East Coast, you know where to find me. I'd love to host you. If you have anybody that needs anything, I'm always here for you.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so
Thanks,
much
Todd.
for coming on, Todd. And nice to see you back in Hawaii, Mike. And thanks, everyone, for watching this week. And we look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.